Hello, my name is Daniel Peskov and welcome to my portfolio screencast for my final project Horizon Wing. I just want to announce what this portfolio piece focuses on and the motive behind creating it. These are level design, environment storytelling, game design, and immersion. To begin with, let me show you some evidence to the development of Horizon Wing. Researching into Horizon Wing, I leaned towards Control 2019, an action-adventure game developed by Remedy Entertainment, and with the style of brutalism catching my eye, this aligned well with the narrative that I've designed. I also went into reference with some itch.io games that fit the psychological thrill style that I wanted to go for. Here are some references to showcase kind of the style I was referencing and researching into at the beginning before the development process. And here as well I looked into some Unity tutorials for systems such as inventory, interaction. These I'm not familiar with due to having not strong programming knowledge, so I lean towards these, and these helped me with my scripting to get these systems in place. So here's just a couple of videos that I sourced and I used during the development. Now in this video you can see a couple of systems I created just before production. A CCTV system that was implemented in the game, as well as a lens flicker and a lens distortion effect on different objects. Walking over to this tunnel now, you can see object scaler system working. The objects get bigger. Unfortunately, this was cut from the game and I had no use for it. And in this part you can see just some block out level areas, as well as a flashlight that I got sorted out in the pre-production area. Here's just a little show through of some areas that I developed in the pre-production stage before going into production. Some more pre-production evidence that I can show leading up to the development of Horizon Wing. Here we can see in this screenshot an image of like a redacted file. I really wanted to go for that government redacted file style, Cold War. So this is just something I made in Photoshop. And moving towards actually managing with the project, being able to move from station to station, I set up a repository through Git, so where I could just push my changes, stash my changes, so whenever I moved from home desktop or on campus working on the kits there, I was able to keep my progress using a development branch that I set up. Here's just an image going over like a floor plan that I created in Photoshop, where the player will start in the staff room and head towards the central hub through a long corridor. Objects will be floating, alarms blaring, and there'll be only one route through to the observation. The player must go to the central hub and then head through the labs and then head through the office to the observatory, which is the last area. This is just some floor planning and level designing that I started working on just before going into production. Here again is just some images of my lens distortion. I wanted to go for that fisheye lens style, not so much VHS but more fisheye, distorted, just surrealism, more effects on the camera, just to give it that style that I wanted to go for. And then some GIFs and some scripting for the flashlighting and for the object scaler, but which was cut at the end. And as you've just seen in the video just before, but here's just the GIFs of them working correctly. Just these systems that I set up, post-processing effects on objects, and then just some script working on these, as well as my CCTV setup that you've just seen. It was very easy, just taking three standard assets to use an old computer and applied a render texture linked to the cameras in my scene. So I set the cameras up, added an actual camera in Unity, and then created a render texture where I could just put the render texture on the actual monitor screen, so it would just display the camera. And a zoom effect as well. Setting up the actual project, I used the free starter assets from Unity's Packet Manager, the asset store, which gave me character controller, rigid body, and basic input, which allowed me just to get the ball rolling really. And here we have the Horizon Wing logo that I created in Photoshop, the desktop icon, and the 1920 by 1080 landscape image of the game. So here we have my GitHub repository with my development branch that I created. This is just going to just showcase all the pushes I've made, just showing how I've been able to keep updated with the work on different stations, all the way up to the end. Just updates, adding new assets, building the level, and so forth. Stepping into the beginning couple of weeks of the development side, here's just a little block out beginning of the game. Big corridor, stepping into the central hub, left to the laboratory, right to the offices, and straight on to the observatory. Stepping now a few more weeks ahead of the production stage, we can now see some more development of the different areas. So you can see the top side would be the laboratory, the left side is the faculty, the starting area, the middle is the hub, and then a couple of corridors branching off towards the observatory. Just going to dive into these areas that I've got developed at this point. So in the faculty area, we can see at this point I've got the basics going on, a lot of room to the left, a nice asset pack that I've imported. This is still very early stage of the development, and this is without lighting. With lighting, it doesn't look much different. Taking on forward towards this big main corridor. Very brutalist and very Cold War style. Into the central hub now, where the player will branch off to two different areas, the laboratory and the observatory. Just take a look into the laboratory. Now we just have the floors planned out, the tiles and the walls. And if we head over to the observatory, it's just some corridors basically at this point, just still grey boxing out. We head towards this big open space. The player will have to platform across with all these buildings. These are all going to be geometry. And heading towards the observatory room and to the exit point. So these are just the early concepts of the pre-production side of Horizon Wing. Now moving into the some Photoshop side of the work that I did during the production stage, as well as the pre-production stage, but more in the production stage. Here we have a file report, basically just giving you some narrative stuff. This is one of the first things the player picks up during the game. Just goes over who you are, what the game idea is, what to do, the mission directive, and just some more narrative stuff here. This was created by me. The background, the images of the clipboard and of the paper and of the logos are all free to use PNGs that I've taken off the web. Using my Photoshop skills, I was able to make this more grungy and look more older. So this is just one of the first items that the player picks up. So yeah, moving on to, we have another clipboard here, basically using the same template, but this is for a puzzle. It's just some more photoshopping stuff that I've used for the game. This is for a puzzle and you have to do it in order. This is just a hint that the player picks up. Now again, one of the first things that the player picks up here is just some onboarding. So instead of, I wanted to go for some interactive onboarding rather than just onboarding on the screen. The player will know WASD to move anyway, but here we just have some inputs from on the keyboard to get the player being able to use the inputs correctly. Now another card that I've created is for the key card puzzle. Created this with free to use PNGs, and not everything else was used by me, created by me. So we have A, B, C and D, and then we have some warning signs I also created for another puzzle which links back to the clipboard puzzle before. We have cooling, power, reactor and wiring. In my game Horizon Wing, I set out to create a first-person, surrealist-style horror experience set inside a fictional Soviet facility during the Cold War. The player spawns in alone in a dark corridor, and they must piece together their identity. You, the player, are an American operative sent to uncover a classified project called Black Sky, when all of a sudden, the facility went down. I chose this style because I wanted to explore isolation as a game mechanic and not just a narrative theme. There is no combat, no hand-holding, just a 1-hour timer until decontamination. There are audio clues, lighting clues, and environmental storytelling. The horror is delivered through uncertainty and atmosphere rather than basic jump scares or enemies popping out around corners to scare the player. I believe the concept of isolation overall worked well, with player testing from peers concluding the game to being, quote, surreal and uneasy. However, an area where the concept did fall short on is some players occasionally got lost in a way that ruined the immersion rather than enhancing it. I developed this project in Unity, which I chose for a couple of reasons. The first one being it's my most confident engine, and being able to navigate the user interface and using small tricks I learned over the years helped with the development. For research, which I've already covered before, I looked into brutalism architecture and Soviet-era industrial design, using solid colour palettes, white neon lighting, and minimal signage to direct the players without hand-holding them. The most successful part of my research and development was the fisheye and post-processing effects. These really enhanced scale distortion and the style of like mental collapse. This process built up my interest in environmental design and level architecture in games, and I came into this project seeing myself as more as a game design generalist, but now I feel much more confident pursuing roles focused more on level design and technical design. Comparing my project to a professional title, it's very reasonable to say that this is nothing short of a sprint. In harsh comparison, this would work on itch.io or any open source game platform in relation to a AAA title like Control, which I referenced. Control has much more polishing, a tighter audio, and better pacing. However, my project I do believe captures the right mood. What would I do if I had more time is I'd focus on two things. First would be to add more narrative collectibles, fragments, readable files, and clues for the player, something like interactable audio logs to build more lore for the facility. This would reinforce the narrative and bring more immersion to the game. As well, if I had more time, the second area I would focus on would be the levels, introducing a better starting area, something like a decontamination room for the players really to get started in. This project tells me going forward that I'm drawn to more atmospheric and narrative-driven projects, and I will continue to develop my skills in Unity, particularly around level design and lighting. I would like to collaborate with narrative designers and programmers for future work to push my ideas to the next level. For this project, I would like to declare that I used AITS2, AI used for shaping. AI was used to assist with the C# scripting throughout this project, both during the pre-production stage and the production stage. AI was used on the fisheye distortion effect on the objects, so when the player would enter a certain capsule collider, sphere collider, box collider, the lens would distort to a certain way. It was also used for audio triggers, to start playing audio on certain areas with certain parameters. It is used for optimization, for my game being quite heavy with level of detail groups helping but not enough. I used it for optimization to disabled areas parented to game objects so that the areas could be deleted when the player entered trigger boxes. This would then make the optimization better and the game feel more smooth. I also used it on puzzle mechanics, including the keypad system and the lever puzzle system. These are quite tricky, so AI was helping me to write these C# scripts so the player could progress through the facility. I'm not a programmer by training, I would be a designer passing on these systems that I've designed, so AI just helped me structure these logic. However, I want to make it very clear that I maintain full understanding and control over every system I implemented. I know how each script functions and how to adjust variables and parameters, as well as how to troubleshoot if necessary. Beyond scripting assistance, AI was not used in environment design, narrative development, the asset work in Photoshop, lighting in the game, audio and level layouts as well. These are all completely independent. The AI served as a tool to bridge gaps in my knowledge of Unity scripts. The direction, design, and execution of this project, Horizon Wing, is my own.